bother children when they are skateboarding. He starts off by reminiscing about watching children skateboarding around the campus at the University of Toronto. They were jumping down flights of stairs and board sliding down the handrails. After a while, the university installed metal skate stoppers on all of the surfaces so children could no longer skate there. It was deemed too dangerous. But that is the whole point, he claims. Playing challenging games and doing difficult things such as skateboarding is how children learn to become competent and courageous in the face of dangerous challenges. When we are overprotective, we are setting them up for failure in the future when challenging situations arise, as they inevitably will. Now, the decision to prevent the kids from skateboarding was not made to do harm. In fact, it was made to prevent harm. But there is a deep-rooted psychological truth at play here. Much like the symbol of the yin and the yang, there is good and bad aspects of everything we do. This is what makes implementing new social rules so risky. Although they may have the best intentions, they most often have unforeseen consequences, such as what he pointed out in the banning of skateboarding. In recent years, there has been a rise in the amount of people demanding the implementation of new social rules. Considering the risk of unforeseen consequences of these rules, why then are so many people jumping on this bandwagon? He refers to the phenomena as a rise in anti-human beliefs. With all of the suffering that exists in the world, regardless of what social rules are implemented, it is very easy to slip into a pessimistic mind state and hold the world in contempt. When we focus only on what's wrong with the world, we can lose sight of what's good. And in the process of implementing new rules that are not well thought out to contend with the bad, we run the risk of damaging what's good and making things worse rather than better. This anti-human belief is a result of overcompensating for real problems. For example, the environmental movement has come about from the very real damage happening to the environment due to the industrialization of the human race. Taken to an extreme, this movement can demonize industrialization and technological progress, and can cast humanity as a cancer that is destroying the earth. Not only does this extreme viewpoint disregard the millions of lives saved by our technological advances, it also adds to this anti-human belief. After all, if humankind is a cancer killing the planet, then that line of logic can lead to even more extreme ideas of population control. If these ideas remain unchecked, this is how we gradually, step by step, get to even more sinister and extreme ideas, such as the ethnic cleansing that was at the heart of World War II. To counter this growing anti-human spirit, we must also acknowledge how amazing human beings are and the incredible feats they are capable of. Just look at the Olympic athletes, or the sport of parkour for an example. Another potential danger of the anti-human movement is that it can help spread dangerous political ideologies. Fascism and communism were sold to the masses by pointing out all that was wrong with the world and promising a solution to the human problem. People were able to rationalize doing whatever it took, or at least turning a blind eye, to bringing about the new utopia that had been promised. This is how the horrors of World War II and what happened in Soviet Russia and Communist China gradually gained momentum and resulted in tens of millions of people dying and hundreds of millions being oppressed. After the end of World War II and the fall of the Soviet Union, these dangerous ideologies no longer had a valid moral claim, and although they were renounced for a time, the dangerous anti-human belief lived on. In this sense, we simply dealt with some of the symptoms of the problem rather than facing the problem itself. Or still, rather than completely abandoning these dangerous ideologies, some intellectuals revised and repackaged it. This, he says, can be seen in the modern political landscape in the rise of the postmodern Marxists. At the heart of this movement is the same anti-human belief that left tens of millions dead in the 20th century. The cornerstone of their philosophy is that human society is rotten to the core, and the only fundamental truth is that mankind's primary motive is to gain power, and in the process they oppress the masses. If only they could bring the whole system crashing down, they would have their utopia. This nihilistic belief is dangerous and seductive because it is in part true. One of mankind's motivating factors is, in fact, power. This, however, is an incomplete picture. The fact that power is a motivating factor does not mean it's the only factor, or even the primary one. For example, most people rise through the ranks due to competency, not power. Perhaps the most dangerous theory is that any idea can be interpreted in countless ways, and all interpretations are equal. The problem is, as we have already discussed, that ideas have consequences, some of which are unintended. Some ideas lived out can hurt people. Some can leave millions dead. All ideas are not equal, and any idea taken too far will lead to unforeseen consequences. It is easy to see the negative aspect in many of our social customs. But if all we see is the negative, then we are likely to try and force a change without realizing what positive aspects we might be losing in the process. If we blindly make changes in this way, we will not be able to accurately determine whether the benefit of the change is worth what it may cost us. Take, for example, the recent trend of trying to rid the world of toxic masculinity. At first glance, you can probably see why someone might seek to implement this change. Masculine aggression taken to an extreme can lead to violence and fascist oppression. However, the world isn't so black and white. Masculinity and aggression aren't necessarily inherently bad things if they are in the correct proportion. Without any aggression, people would avoid conflict at all costs and would not stick up for themselves. This leads to passive aggression, where the individual allows themselves to be walked all over, which in turn leads to resentment, spite, and indignation. Part of the masculinity that has been deemed toxic is what drives boys to compete with each other and partake in risky behaviors such as skateboarding. Risk-taking on an extreme level can lead to criminal activity, but that does not mean all risk-taking is criminal. The competition, the pecking order, and the challenging risk-taking behavior is exactly what toughens boys up and allows them to learn how to become strong men. If we are too overprotective, then we will never become independent, because they will have been raised to be dependent on other people protecting them. This is bad news for women as much as it is for men. Life is challenging, much too challenging for any one person to take on their own. We need people in our life that we can depend on when the going gets tough. If we are going to be able to depend on the men in our lives, they must be capable of being independent themselves. This can't happen if we condemn all masculine behavior and attempt to overprotect our children. So let boys be boys. In the process, they will learn to toughen up and rise up to meet challenging situations. Learning how to grow up into a strong, competent man is worth a couple of wipeouts. So, for the sake of the future generation, leave children alone when they are skateboarding.